So my first paid filmmaker gig was £50. But recently I did a project that was £7,000 plus. And I wanted to make this video basically to walk through how I went from getting like £50 filmmaking gigs to sort of getting crazy dream productions like the one I did a few months ago. And I want to explain it in a way that can hopefully help you not get stuck in this like feast or famine freelancer cycle that I was stuck in for so long. The problem like we all face as filmmakers at the beginning, right, is my first paid job was £50. It probably worked out at about like £2 an hour. And most of the time I just worked for free. Most of the time it felt like my privilege to be the one making films where I should be paying them. And then you sort of like progress slightly, and I started thinking in terms of like day rates, so £120, £250. I remember having to like cover my mouth to stop myself laughing the first time someone said £350 for a day's work. And then the issue of that is just becomes this like feast or famine, constant stress between jobs. And I just felt like really burnt out and undervalued, and I felt really anxious about money all the time. And that anxiety reinforced that energy, and I ended up attracting like more low paying, like difficult people to work with, which just was really, really hard. So what I've done is I put together a little document that outlined how I first broke free of this, and it's inside a post inside my free school community. So if you're interested in that at all you have to do is just message me or follow the link below, and you can read that for free, and hopefully it can help you break through the same problem that I essentially broke through eventually. And what essentially like shifted that for me in the end was I discovered this thing called value-based pricing, and I used this and I deployed this instead of day rates. Now the caveat for this being like day rates and stuff like that obviously is what you need to be doing if you're working on other people's productions. If I hired you, for example, if the BBC hired you, you still have to work on the day rate basis. But for creating films in the meantime, to really sort of break through that gap in between jobs, as soon as I discovered value-based pricing and I started pitching this to businesses and organizations, it's just like completely changed my life essentially. And what's happened is like when I started out, I would get on calls with businesses and companies, and they'd say, well, what's your rate? What's your day rate? And I would say, oh, my rate is like £250, which was just like the biggest mistake ever, because it didn't position me as like a solution to a problem they were trying to solve. It just positioned me as like a commodity essentially. So like the analogy I would give, like people often say, well, how much does a video cost, right? Which isn't something you have to deal with if you work in TV or in production. And so the analogy I would give is like, it's kind of like a house. Like, do you want a 1-bedroom flat in West Wales, or do you want a 6-bedroom house in the middle of London, right? They're basically the same thing. They're buildings that you could live in, but the prices are completely different based on what you get, right? And they're not priced based on how much it cost the builder to actually build the building, because the building cost would be the same, basically, give or take, the cost of living in London versus the cost of living in Wales. And so straight away, like not answering that question, not giving a day rate, not giving like an exact number was really helpful. And often if you're speaking to a company or a business, they have a price, a budget in mind. So they'll probably be thinking within a range. And if you say 250 and they're thinking, oh, we have £5,000, they might think, oh, we have you for X days, 20 days. Is that good maths? They might think, oh, great, we have Sam for 20 days. But that's not actually what will happen. They'll end up cutting corners, trying to cut the cost of you, and then they won't perceive you as someone who's actually delivering a solution for them. They'll just perceive you as an expensive worker who works for them. And what a film essentially is for the business is a solution to a problem within their business, right? So if they're having trouble recruiting videos are really powerful for getting higher quality members of staff on board. Like if they're having trouble selling products on a website, like having a video converts like 70% of more people on a website, for example. Like all these little things like that. So no one actually cares about the video or the feel-good factor of a video. They care about the actual impact that's going to have on the project or the business or the the project they're trying to do, essentially. But the other thing that then will trip you up is essentially starting out, right? If you're a freelancer, like I was for a long time, I still am, I still do freelancing stuff, you get caught up in those low balling numbers and you forget the value of the actual projects you work on. So I've worked on the David Attenborough archive team, I've worked on productions for like BBC and Channel 3, and I've worked on shoots for Nike, and my rate was relatively low, and I never thought about the actual cost of the whole production, right? So if you're delivering a production to a business, the kind of numbers you can throw around are completely different. And there's this tactic called anchoring, which works really well in all businesses, but for filmmaking, I've found what's really useful is to like anchor a really high number. So the way I was able to get, and still am able to get, really big budgets for me as like an independent filmmaker is I say a number so high that I'm almost laughing at saying it. So that the number for me at the moment, when someone says how much does a video cost, the number for me at the moment that I can say without cracking a smile is £20,000, you know, because I have worked on productions that big as well, but that's the kind of range I'd feel comfortable delivering at the moment, although that is going up and it's growing. But as soon as you say a high number like £20,000, what it does is it anchors them there, and then essentially when you then pitch a £3,000, a £4,000 budget, it sounds like a bargain, because psychologically they've got the £20,000 marker in their head. And then the other really important thing to do, which we forget to do because we're all filmmakers and we're quite nerdy and we're really into like, I'm going to shoot this on an FX3 and I'm going to use a 24 to 70mm lens and blah 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 blah. I want to do anamorphic for this project, right? The people who want the film don't care. They care about how it makes them feel. And there's this classic analogy in business, and you know, I'm boring myself bringing it up, but the analogy is when you go on holiday, you sell the destination, you don't sell the flight, right? So we start to obsess about the flight a little bit too much, like what kit we're going to use, where we're going to shoot, how, and they don't really care about that. They care about the outcome at the end of it. And it's different because we've come through like film schools, traditional like shoots, like working on commercials, things like that. So we're used to all that jargon being quite exciting, especially if you're working like at the BBC or something, because people go, oh yeah, that's exciting. But when you're dealing with like an external company, a charity or an organization or a business, they're not likely to really care about that as much. So it's really important to sell like, why do you want this film? What's it like, or what problem are you trying to solve? And let me create a film that's actually going to solve that problem for you, because then you can ask for way more. So for example, I helped a company recently get a load of funding from the government by showcasing the project they were already doing. So the film costing between £5,000 and £8,000 was an absolute steal if they were going to end up getting £200,000 worth of funding. But I could have pitched a pretty film for £4,000 and probably would have been a harder sell. But by figuring out what their actual problem was and then figuring out what kind of budget we had to actually solve that problem, it changed the dynamic completely, and it meant we could make a really amazing film. The film had an amazing impact on people because the goal wasn't just to make a film, the goal was to continue the amazing work that the people on the project were already doing, right? And then so what this has done for me is essentially I've ended up in these gaps in between TV and commercials and freelance jobs, is I've ended up landing like film projects with just me for anywhere between £2,000 and £8,000, which is just crazy. I mean, that fills a gap, and obviously all that money doesn't go to me. There's costs, there's production costs, there's fuel, I then hire people, I bring people in. But my new skill set that's helped me fill this gap in this feast or famine period, you know, where it has felt a bit like that the TV industry has been squeezed slightly. But I don't think there's an issue with the industry. I just think the approach needs to change slightly, because there's more opportunity than ever to make these kinds of films. For a bit like, people know how important it is to make content, to make films, to make things for their businesses, right? And so there's never been a better opportunity to do this. And then if you combine that with your freelance income, where you're doing jobs on TV shows and getting opportunities here and there, all of a sudden, I mean, I've made £11,000 in a single month, nearly 3 times now. I think the third time it was slightly short, the deposit came in the next month, so it wasn't officially, but it's completely changed how it works for me, because I'm not I'm not stressed between jobs anymore because I have these cushions which carry me on to the next one. And I think not only is it like, oh, it's good because you have money and because you can make stuff, but it's crazy because it takes away the stress and energy that you're carrying. And if you're carrying that when you're going into an interview, or if you're going into a meeting with a client and you need to sell them, that energy comes across and you end up discounting. And if you make a film, if you made a film for, if I paid you £7,000 to make a film, I can guarantee it will be better than if I paid you £1,000 to make a film. And I think flipping that mindset a little bit for me was like, oh, rather than trying to get them a deal, like understanding how much more I can do for the right people for the right money. And it builds this like conviction, right? Because not only have I made £7,000 making a film, the films were it was just one film. It went so well, and I had so many messages from people saying, "Oh, that was so impactful. This film made me cry." And it's like, oh, like the more we get for our budget, the more we can actually get out of this as a project, And then the other thing with it is, because you know your worth and because you position yourself in that way, when you have meetings with people who aren't aligned and who are going to cause you a lot of headache, you end up like saying no to them because you're like, no. And I think a bit of me thinks maybe you have to have a few shocking clients to get to that point so you actually know when to say yes. But I mean, the whole point of me making this video is I hope that you don't have to do that, because I've had some horrendous jobs that made me just want to quit and just burn out, and just I couldn't sleep, and it was just horrendous, and I didn't make any money, and it cost me money, and it cost me in my relationships and in my health and everything. And my hope is genuinely that people can shortcut that, because I never had this education, and my university tutors, they'd never sold a video package in their life. This wasn't open to them, so yeah, I think that it's such a game changer. It's such a crazy opportunity, because you don't then have to leave TV behind. You don't have to leave commercials or films or freelancing or working on other people's projects. You don't have to give that up, because you just have this other form of income, this other form of opportunity to just supplement your filmmaking career and actually make, I think it's actually served me really well. It's actually helped me get TV jobs, because I've ended up creating stuff that's super aligned with me, and people have probably seen that, and it's probably put me ahead of other people in my role who have more experience, so yeah, if any of that is valuable to you, I've got a few spots at the moment in my calendar where I'd really like to have just a few people to work one-on-one with to really help implement this. So if you're interested in that at all and you'd like to chat to me more about this, then there's a link in the description for you to apply, and it is first come first serve, because the calendar is slightly stacking up already. And but otherwise, drop me a message. I'd love to like get your thoughts if there's anything I've missed here. But I think that the main thing really is just trying to disconnect the thing for me that helped the most was trying to disconnect my perception of selling my time for money and delivering value for money. So I'm not giving you my time, I'm giving you this high quality asset, which is worth a lot more than my time to you, right? Then the time to make it doesn't really matter as much. And I think figuring out what a client's budget actually is, because a lot of these people, I didn't realize they have like 5, 6, 7, 10, 20,000 pounds to play with, and they want to play with it, and it doesn't matter to them because they're a business, and they want the solution to the problem they're solving. So like trying to get those numbers out of them and then tailoring the solution to that is super helpful. Anchoring it high. So say a number you're scared to say. I'm thinking I need to say that a number higher than 20 now. I think I'm going to push it, because 20 really won't get you what I could potentially deliver if I was able to hire, 3, 4, 5 people for a production, And it's about showing the end result for them. So what is this actually going to show you at the end? What you're going to get out of this? How is this going to help your business and your production? How your production is going to really solve a problem for their project and their business and move them forward and make them look good at the end of the day. As well as just like emphasize the really good work that all these businesses and projects and people are doing. Like this is like crazy time where transparency and making things look cinematic, and it's just never been more valuable. It's never been more valuable. And the general feeling around the industry is that we're struggling, but I don't think we are. I think the approach just needs a slight tweak and shift. And the beauty of it is every time you do this and get a win, your confidence grows. I mean, when I started out actually having calls and conversations with people, it was like £500, and that was like, oh, stomach was going, you know. And now I'm at a place where I can confidently say like £20,000 for a production, you know. So it does take time. You just kind of have to stick with it, and you will get there in the end. And yeah, if you found that useful, let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And yeah, thanks for watching. If you watched the whole 16 minutes of me rambling, I appreciate it. Lots of love.